It's the day after Election Day, so it's totally appropriate to bring onto the program Mississippi's Secretary of State, Michael Watson. Good to see you there, Mr. Secretary. Big day yesterday.
Man, it was, and I'm really proud of Mississippi. Phenomenal election, save one county, and they obviously had issues that I'm sure we'll address at some point in time, but really proud of all of our poll workers, our commissioners, and our clerks around the state. They did a phenomenal job. We had zero cybersecurity issues, and 81 of 82 counties did a fantastic job. So big shout out to my team and my staff that did a phenomenal job of training up our commissioners and our clerks and advising them throughout the day. So I just want to say a big thanks to them. Did a wonderful job.
Yeah, and we should point out, I happen to know a little bit about this because my daughter's one of those staff. It was a late night. I mean, your team, and they took it like troopers. Your team was working pretty late last night, honestly.
They were. And let me say this. The folks that have questions about Hinds County, we had observers at every single one of those precincts. And, we were on the ground making sure that the law was being followed. Unfortunately, the commissioners and the team there on Hinds County they weren't prepared. And there weren't enough ballots around. So a lot of folks have asked questions, and that's fine. They can ask the questions, but the statutory duty to make sure you have enough ballots falls on elections commissioners. And so I just want to be clear whose job it was. And I think that's an important part of educating Mississippians to know who to hold accountable. And that's where the buck stops. Yeah,
and great point. Alex, my daughter, shared with me that of all the precincts she visited, where there were some of those that had that situation where they ran out of ballots and voters in line were held up and noted that she was from your office and asked, hey, what's the problem here? Why don't you guys have more ballots? And she very politely, respectfully explained that's not the responsibility of the Secretary of State. It's the responsibility of the counties. And,
yeah, look, 23, I think it's 23, 15, 5, 13.
Yeah.
I believe that's right. Says basically that the county should have at a minimum of 60% of the active voters prepared ballots. So that case should have been about 100,000, I think, roughly in Hinds County in those precincts. So we'll get to the bottom of it with them and ask them what exactly went wrong. And again, I like to point out 81 of 82 counties had a phenomenal election day yesterday. Those clerks and commissioners received the same training. They're on the same phone calls leading up to the election and have the same access to advice that we give every other county. So I'm proud of our day yesterday.
Yeah. And, if you think about it, it really, just from a logistical and systems perspective, it would make sense for your office to produce the ballot for every race in the state, for every county and every precinct in the state. That would make sense. It makes sense to do that at the county level, for that to be controlled and handled at the county level. And I know, as is the case with my polling place, once your address is confirmed, the poll worker then determines which ballot you need. There's some precincts, as you well know, where there are multiple ballots that could be used, that voters just happen to be represented differently depending on the race, but they use the same precinct, same polling place.
That's right. You can have split precincts, and some of the questions, look, we were getting calls at 9 o'clock in the morning. No reason to run out of ballots that early.
Yeah.
And one of the issues there is if you've got a split precinct, then the commissioners should recognize that, and you should have enough of a certain type of ballot style for both sides of the precinct, if you want to say sides, that you've got that split. And our understanding was there were certain precincts where there was significantly more number of ballot styles in one side than there were the other.
Okay.
When it should have been conversely, it should have been more ballot style for this side of the precinct than that side of the precinct. So there was confusion out there, but again, at the end of the day, the statutory guidelines and duties fall on the election commissioners to make sure that the ballots are properly supplied.
Yeah. Okay. So a question that's come up today, Mr. Secretary, on the C Spire text line is a voter required to mark in the mark-sense forms there that the scanners read? Are they required to vote in every single race, or can they leave races blank?
They are not. and that is called an undervote.
Okay.
So if voters decide, look, I don't want to vote for this candidate in this race, and it's uncontested, they don't have to mark that circle.
Okay.
So there are questions about, what happens then. Well, there are really, it's kind of handled a little bit differently depending on what type of machine each county has. Some of those will ask, are you sure? And then others will just accept it as an undervote. So depending on the type of machine that they had, a certain manufacturer, it could be handled in different ways.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, yes, you can vote for whoever you want to. If you want to go vote for one person and leave the rest of your ballot blank, that's fine.
Yeah.
It would be accepted.
Okay, so there's no statute in Mississippi that says, hey, when you vote, you got to vote in every race on your ballot.
That's exactly right.
Okay, all right. So because I had somebody on the C-Spire text line said that the machine rejected a ballot if the bubble was not colored in on all races at my precinct. That's reading the text. So I just asked what county. I don't know if that means the machines are not calibrated correctly or if that's just a misunderstanding of what was actually happening. But I did have several others who said, I undervoted, and the machine said, hey, you undervoted. Are you okay with that? Do you want to go ahead and cast your ballot? That's been my experience, what I've seen.
That's right. Look, I've got personal experience of undervoting before in Jackson County, and the ballot was accepted. So, again, depending on where you were, I had some commissioners pull me aside yesterday in my precinct and said, look, we had some folks that accidentally maybe slightly colored in one bubble, and they didn't mean to, so they had to spoil that ballot because the machines read it very clearly.
Right.
So those things do happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was sharing before you came on the program, you telling me about I believe it's the 2020 election, if I'm not mistaken, that we had more ballots cast on that particular ballot, the form itself. It was either for medical marijuana or the flag, I kind of lose track of that, than we did for president statewide. Is that right? Didn't you say something about that?
Yeah, I can't remember, Gerard, which issue it was, but that rings a bell in my head there. And again, it goes to the point. You can undervote some races. You don't want to cast a ballot. You don't have to.
Yeah.
This is America, and it's our right to go out to the poll and vote. So you can't be forced to vote on any issue nor for any candidate if you don't want to.
Okay. And if somebody encounters that, Mr. Secretary, when they're casting their ballot and they have made the conscious, deliberate decision to undervote, to not cast, not vote in a particular race, how should they handle that? Should they report that to the poll workers? What should they do?
Yeah, I'd encourage them. It's always good to build relationships with your poll workers when you do have questions like that. And at the end of the day, you can ask for the poll manager and say, look, here's the deal. I want to vote this. I don't want to vote that, and my ballot should be accepted. And if you've got a question about it, call the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to back them up on that.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Hinds County and extending the hours.
Sure.
Give us a rundown of what happened there.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and a lot of folks are going to have questions, and that's okay. We're here to explain that. At the end of the day, what we saw was, again, a lack of proper number of ballots in the precincts. We started hearing about a possible challenge that afternoon. 2 lawsuits were filed, one in Chancery Court, one in Circuit Court. The one in Chancery Court was filed by the Mississippi Democratic Party. The one in Circuit Court was filed by Mississippi Votes. If you look at, I can't remember the statute off the top of my head, maybe 23-15-913, something in that area, basically says, look, the procedure is the Supreme Court will assign judges to hear expeditiously challenges on Election Day. And Mississippi Votes case followed that statute, and basically that judge said no. There are a number of precincts where we've seen issues, but not enough to rise to the level of extending the hours.
Okay.
The other judge in the Chancery Court said, yeah, let's open all the precincts until 8 o'clock. So that was and sometimes, look, we see this. We see friendly cases filed and friendly results come down.
Yeah.
As I understand it, the circuit clerk then decided, because of the statute that says how election challenges will be held on Election Day, followed the orders from the circuit clerk.
Sure.
And the polls were closed at 7. Now, here's the key I want everybody to understand. When there are issues, when hours should be extended at polling places, our office calls the circuit clerk in that county and reminds them, and we did this yesterday, Should there be any reason to extend hours, you are only to vote on affidavit ballots after 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, look, if a judge comes back and it's appealed, and it says, no, you should not have been voted, well, we know which votes to throw out, the affidavit ballots that were cast after 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So our team did a phenomenal job yesterday of reminding the clerks and commissioners across this state, here, if you have this issue, here's how you handle it.
Okay.
Here's what the law says. And at the end of the day, it's very clean and clear here. We have no authority to force them to do that. All we can do is tell them, here's what the law says.
I got you.
You're the one that has to make that decision.
I got you. Well, we appreciate you coming on, and you made the great point that we got 82 counties, and 81 of them were smooth, and one we had some issues. But it sounds like at the end of the day, that all got resolved, and we're good to go. We got ballot elections. Appreciate you and your team, Mr. Secretary. Appreciate you coming on. We'll talk soon. Thanks.
You got it, buddy. Take care.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth